Malfoy's been giving generously to all sorts of things for years. Gets him in with the right people. Then he can ask favours. Delay laws he doesn't want passed. Oh, he's very well connected, Lucius Malfoy. This quote got me thinking, did Lucius Malfoy, known Death Eater and proponent of pure blood supremacy, actually bribe his way out of going to Azkaban? And if that's the case, why didn't money help Bellatrix in the same way? Let's dive into it. Hey everyone, welcome to another installment of Harry Potter Theory. If we look at the actions and behaviours of Lucius Malfoy in the books and films, it's almost impossible to ignore the red flags. He was highly intolerant of muggles, muggleborns, he was a huge advocate for blood purity, and he was extremely outspoken. He would also wield his money and status like a weapon, flaunting it at any opportunity. From a moral standpoint, he's arguably one of the worst characters in the entire series, but the fact that he's so easy to hate tells me he's probably just a well-written character. Do we hate him? Yes. But would I remove him from the story? Absolutely not. After graduating from Hogwarts in the early 1970s, Lucius Malfoy found himself in a position of privilege due to his family's wealth and status. And with no immediate need to pursue a career, he chose to remain at the family estate, indulging in the luxuries and comforts that had surrounded him since childhood. It was during this period that he deepened his relationship with Narcissa Black, a fellow wealthy and pure-blood Slytherin from Hogwarts. Their shared disdain for muggles and appreciation for the wealthy lifestyle provided by their affluent families created a strong bond between them. Eventually, their romantic connection culminated into marriage. But despite his comfortable lifestyle, Lucius still had aspirations of his own, and instead of simply relaxing at his manor home, he chose instead to loiter at the Ministry of Magic headquarters. With a keen instinct for power and a hunger for control, he began to strategically cultivate personal connections with some of the most influential figures in the magical community. These relationships extended beyond fellow purebloods and heads of families, and included key decision-makers and high-ranking officials within the Ministry of Magic. Through his associations, Malfoy positioned himself as a prominent player in both the political and social spheres, ensuring that his voice carried weight in shaping the direction of wizarding society, something that made him the perfect pawn in Voldemort's scheme. By the time he had left school, rumours began to circulate that Lord Voldemort, having delved into depraved dark magic in pursuit of invincibility, had finally achieved immortality, a fact that only reinforced the prevailing notion that he was unstoppable. And so Lucius, fueled by his unwavering commitment to the purification of the wizarding race and his fervent desire to eradicate muggleborns in favour of placing purebloods in positions of power, ultimately pledged his eternal allegiance to the Dark Lord and formally joined the ranks of the Death Eaters. For a while, this worked out well for him. Things weren't looking too good for wizarding society, and Lucius, who suckled at the proverbial power teat, felt that Voldemort would eventually take control. He merely positioned himself accordingly. And by the height of the war, Lucius had quickly risen to the ranks of Voldemort's second-in-command. But when Voldemort fell at the hands of an infant Harry Potter, his world began to crumble. With Voldemort's defeat, the Death Eaters found themselves in a state of shock, unsure of what to do next. And it didn't take long for the brewing opposition, the Order of the Phoenix, to capitalize on their new position, subsequently capturing Death Eaters all across Britain. At this point, most of the Death Eaters were brought in front of the Council of Magical Law for trial. Here, they could state their case and explain their actions. Why were they serving the Dark Lord? And for the most part, the guilty parties were justifiably sentenced. Barty Crouch Jr., Rabastan Lestrange, Rodolphus Lestrange, and Bellatrix Lestrange were all sentenced to life in Azkaban after they were caught for capturing and brutally torturing the Longbottoms. But other Death Eater sympathizers were given different treatment. Igor Karkaroff was released from Azkaban when he gave information leading to the capture of a fellow Death Eater. Severus Snape was cleared of all charges because Dumbledore vouched for him. But what came of Lucius? From the moment word began to spread that Voldemort had been defeated, Lucius began to put in the groundwork to ensure that he could evade imprisonment. Lucius, a man who heavily valued his wealth and social status, feared prison perhaps more than anything, And so from the onset of Voldemort's defeat, he began fraternizing with as many high-ranking Ministry officials as he could. And so, when the time came for Lucius to face the Council of Magical Law and to answer for his involvement as a Death Eater, he was prepared. The official narrative presented Lucius Malfoy as a victim of the Imperius Curse, asserting that he had been under its influence and compelled to serve Lord Voldemort against his own will. This defense, at face value, appeared weak, but because of the steps that Lucius had taken pre-trial, he was able to narrowly squeeze through the jaws of justice. But I still don't quite get it. Lucius was a high-ranking Death Eater and confirmed follower of the Dark Lord. How could he have evaded justice so swiftly? Many witches and wizards, including Arthur Weasley, wondered the same thing. Well, as it turns out, money talks, and not unlike the Muggle world, power and influence can go a long way. We know that, upon hearing of Voldemort's defeat, Lucius desperately asserted his power and influence to the highest degree. And what exactly did that entail? Well, I think he greased a couple of pockets, or at least just enough pockets to ensure any votes would go in his favor. The next component to Lucius being absolved of responsibility was the fact that his defense, while difficult to prove, was equally difficult to disprove. At present, there is no definitive way of identifying whether someone previously acted under the Imperius Curse. No mark on their body, no nothing. To properly charge Lucius, the Wizengamot would have had to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Lucius was not under the influence of the Imperius Curse, and the proof simply wasn't there. This is also where the little bit of influence that Lucius had would have gone a long way. I also want to take this opportunity to point out that at this time, the Ministry was likely very corrupt. It only takes one glance at the list of ministers for magic over the past few centuries to recognize that corruption in the Ministry was prolific, and that many dubious individuals were able to reach the pinnacle of power, Minister for Magic, within the Ministry's ranks. There were plenty of ministers driven by money. But interestingly, there were also a lot of ministers that were openly anti-Muggle, even in more recent times. And how did these openly anti-Muggle ministers get elected into office? Shared sentiment. Ministers are democratically elected through a public vote, and if people are voting them in, this tells me that there's still a lot of intolerance out there. I think that Wizarding Society, despite the outward appearance of progress, may not be as progressive as it is often portrayed. And I suspect that it was these same closeted pureblood supremacists, in tandem with a bit of money and influence, that helped Lucius evade the jaws of justice. But now you might be wondering, if money helped Lucius avoid Azkaban, why not Bellatrix? The Malfoys were incredibly wealthy, but so were the Lestrangers, and the combined fortune of Bellatrix and Rodolphus, who hailed from the Black and Lestrange families respectively, would have been staggering. I think that the simple answer to this is that the most devout followers of Voldemort willingly went to prison to prove that they were devoted. After Voldemort's defeat, many Death Eaters were left disoriented. But an important thing to note here is that the crime Bellatrix was charged with, torturing the Longbottoms, occurred after Voldemort's defeat. Bellatrix was a different kind of crazy. Voldemort had been defeated, a fact she was very much aware of, but she continued to abide by his principles and follow his cause. Lucius was an intolerant bigot, but he was also a coward, and because of this, I don't think he was ever a true Death Eater. Now, onto the Second Wizarding War. If Lucius was able to avoid prison by stating that he'd been under the Imperius Curse the first time around, then surely this same defense wouldn't work twice. This one has actually been answered by Rowling. On the first occasion, he claimed to have been acting under the Imperius Curse, though many claimed he called in favours from high-placed Ministry officials. On the second occasion, he provided evidence against fellow Death Eaters and helped ensure the capture of many of Lord Voldemort's followers who had fled into hiding. However, I think that there are a few other components to this. Apparently, the Ministry went easiest on Lucius and Draco because they had abandoned Voldemort's cause. Furthermore, it was Narcissa Malfoy's deceit of Voldemort in the Forbidden Forest that allowed Harry to complete his mission and defeat Voldemort. Tie that in with the fact that Lucius helped capture remaining Death Eaters, and I think that this helped the Malfoy family as a whole garner favour in the eyes of the Ministry. However, despite narrowly avoiding prison, Lucius Malfoy had lost all of his loyalties and connections. He had a completely tarnished reputation. If you ask me, he should have gone to prison. He was still a follower of Voldemort for a long time, and the role he played in the Second War should have automatically made him accountable for his role in the First War as well, something that he never had to pay his dues for. And that's it for this video. What do you think? Are there any other plausible explanations for how Lucius was able to avoid Azkaban? Let me know down in the comment section below. Also, if you enjoy the content, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and be sure to check out my second channel, Harry Potter Theory Extra. Until next time, remember, it does not do to dwell on dreams and to forget to live.